So just to tell you a little bit about the Canadian Mental Health Association, we're a national charity founded in 1918. We do have different branches all across I was going to say the province, the country. So for example, we're CMHA of New Brunswick, and we have different services than Ontario might have, for example. And what we do is we provide education and resources to individuals that are wanting to recover from mental illness or just sort of keep on top of mental wellness, right? And just kind of try to stay on top of that and be as healthy as possible. We do have 18 locations provincially. We have offices in Fredericton, Moncton, and St. John, the big cities. We have community program coordinators, so that's someone like myself. There are 14 of us around the province. So not only do we have services in the large cities, we also have services all across the province. And as you can imagine, the needs, in Moncton are very different than the needs in Woodstock, let's say, right? So my colleague Katie takes care of that region, and that way we can provide tailored services to our clients. So start off with a few statistics here. 1 in 5 individuals will experience a mental health problem each year, and 1 in 3 will experience a mental health problem in their lifetime. 500,000 Canadians miss work each week due to a mental health concern. That's quite a high number, and that's just, you're having one of those days where you just don't feel up to going into work, and you call in and I need today off, right? That happens to 500,000 individuals. 30% of all disability claims are mental health related, and the costs are 70%. So that means out of all of the claims, there are 30% that are classified as mental health. And out of 100% of all the payouts that they make, 70% of it is for mental health reasons. So that's quite a big resource, that's taking place because of mental health issues. Estimated annual costs of mental illness, and that can be healthcare, lost productivity, reductions in health-related quality of life, and so on. On the Canadian economy, it's $51 billion every year. 60 to 80% of visits to primary care doctors, so family physicians, or after-hours clinics even, may be stress-related. Again, that's a very high number. And 5 out of 5 of us have mental health, and we can all benefit from resiliency, right? We all have a certain physical health, right? And we all have a certain mental health, every single one of us. And whether we have, sorry, I'm just thinking of like more of a physical illness, something like, let's say, I'm drawing a blank. I'm thinking of diabetic. There we go. Diabetes. If you were to have diabetes, you do have an illness. However, there is a way to stay healthy, or as healthy as possible, right? Eating well, exercising, keeping track of your levels and things like that, right? So there are ways that you can stay as healthy as possible. And it's the same with mental health. It's possible to have an illness, but there are different stages where you can sort of land as it relates to health, right? So when we speak of mental health, you can be at the higher end where you're sort of feeling at peace and confident and calm. And all of those great feelings that we normally associate, with happiness and contentment. Or we can also be on the lower end where we're very stressed, we're tired, we're depressed, we're sad, you know, and any other emotion that you can really think of that we perceive as negative, right? Because normally it's very heavy and it's something that's unpleasant to sort of go through. So it's a continuum, right? And you can land on different areas. And what influences our mental health? We have resilience. So, and some individuals are just more resilient than others, right? If you think to a time where a group of individuals, maybe it was at work, let's say, and a group of you heard of a new policy that was being put in place by the company, and the reactions of everyone around you, right? Because whatever change in policy was being made, we all have to adhere to if we want to stay at the same company, right? But the reactions are different. And that's where resilience can come into play, right? Some individuals can just bounce back fairly quickly and say, you know what, accept the new circumstances and run with it, even though it may not be pleasant. And others may be a lot more explosive, right, in expressing how they don't accept the change and they kind of fight against it. Other things that influence our mental health is life balance. You know, how focused are you on work versus home versus, you know what I mean? Any other aspect of your life? Is there one that's sort of being neglected because you're focusing so much on another part, maybe, right? Awareness. Are you aware of your mental health? Do you take the time to check in with yourself and see how it is that you're doing and remedy if you're not doing well, right? Self-compassion and self-care. Often when we feel tired, depressed, sad, that sort of thing, the first thing that'll go out the window is self-care, isn't it? Right? So you think of someone who normally gets dressed up just so, and they always, you know, their clothes are very neat, and they may even put makeup on or whatever it is, whatever their routine is. If they're going through a tough time, sometimes you'll see that that just goes out the window, right? And they don't dress the same, they don't look the same. And are you gentle with yourself if something like that happens, right? So, positive attitude. And when you're feeling good, it's easy to have a positive attitude, isn't it? But when we're feeling low, where does our mind usually go? Usually goes to negative, worst case scenario, right? That sort of thing. So how can we incorporate maybe some positive thoughts even though we're feeling down? Mindfulness. How mindful are we of what it is that we do? Is our mind on other things? Every time we're doing one task, are we thinking of something else, right? Self-esteem. How do you feel about yourself? Are you able to show just your authentic self, right? Do you have the courage to do that and live your truth? What's your physical health like, right? If you have physical health concerns, of course, that may affect your mental health, may cause stress, you know? And coping strategies. What sort of coping strategies do you have on your side? And are you using them to the best of your ability? And then we move on to mental illness. So again, that's another continuum. Individuals that have been diagnosed with mental illness can fall anywhere on that line, right? Over on the left where it would be a little more severe, right? And over on the right, it would be less severe. You can have two individuals that have been diagnosed with, let's say, generalized anxiety disorder, right? But one may be functioning at a much higher level than the other. And factors that could increase or influence the risk of developing a mental illness, because it's never black and white, right? You can increase the risk of it happening, but it's not a black and white guaranteed to happen sort of thing. chemical imbalance. Of course, if there's something that's going on physiologically with you that puts you at a disadvantage, right? That's, of course, it's a contributing factor. Individual attributes and behavior, right? So just different personalities and resiliency levels and that sort of thing. Substance use and substance misuse, that can greatly change our moods too, right? You think of alcohol, it's something that's accepted in our society. It's a legal substance for adults. And, but it causes depressive symptoms, doesn't it? So if someone has a drink on a certain day, you can still feel those depressive effects for several days after, right? Depending on how often it is that we consume alcohol. So anyway, that is one thing that can contribute to mental illness. And I use alcohol as an example, but there are many other substances or even behaviors that can sort of feed into that. Social and economic circumstances, right? You think of what we're going through right now, the environment that we're in, right? And another one of them is environmental factors, living through a pandemic that's going to be talked about for centuries to come, right? Of course, it's something that's big and it's affecting all of us in different ways. Traumatic life events, right? Abuse, neglect, anything like that, an accident, hereditary factors, and other illnesses that could, you know, increase your stress level and that sort of thing. So when we put the two together, the mental health and the mental illness, here's where we can sort of land on the continuum, right? So if you are diagnosed with a mental illness, however, you have a high sense of self and high self-esteem, right? If you look over on the top right-hand corner, you'll see that you're flourishing and you're succeeding, you know, at sort of staying on top of things and just functioning well in whatever way it looks like for you. But on the other hand, if you're diagnosed with a mental illness and your mental health is low, right, there are some changes that could stand to be made in that respect. You may be suffering, right, and going through a tough time. So understand whatever stressor in your life, the pressures of that stress exceeds the resources that you have to deal with it, right? So we can all go through the same event, but depending on the resources that we have in our corner, and that can go back to, you know, just personal things like self-esteem and assertiveness and that sort of thing, but it can also be supports, right? So family and friends and even community resources. So are those things adequate for me to deal with that pressure that I'm facing in my life? If not, if the resources fall short, that means there's going to be stress. And if it's prolonged, right, that's where it becomes problematic and really takes a toll on us, on our behaviors, on our thoughts, on our energy levels, right? And 4 basic sources of stress come from environment, social stressors, physiological, and our own thoughts. And what does stress look like for all of us? It's different, isn't it? We all deal with stress in different ways, and we all sort of like portray stress in different ways too, right? And feel free to jump in if you want to share just different ways that you might identify stress in your life. I know for me, one of the little things, if I'm really worried about something, I'll be biting my lip, right? I'll do that thing. So when I'm doing it, my boyfriend will just kind of look at me and I'll be like, okay. So, and then we'll have a talk about whatever it is that's stressing me out. But that's one of my physical symptoms. And anyone else's could be very different, you know, playing with your nails or tapping your fingers on the desk or something like that, right? And the stress response can just be that the physical sensations that come along after you have that thought. Okay, so you have that thought where it's like, "Oh, I either forgot to do this, or this is something I'm going to have to deal with, and I'm afraid of the repercussions," and that sort of thing. So after having these thoughts, of course, there are going to be physical responses, right? So just feeling warm, maybe, or feeling as if your heart is beating fast. You know, different things like that. And we all have different stress responses. And when does it become too much? And could that maybe look different to different people, right? There are some individuals that can absolutely handle stress more healthily than others, right? So they may be able to take on a bit more stress than other individuals too. So what's resilience? A definition that we found is that it's the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family, relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stressors. So bouncing back from difficult experiences. Just one moment. Always need a drink of water. So really, when you think of it, we're all resilient because we have all survived every single challenging thing that has happened to us in our lives. We're all here today, aren't we? And we've all survived it in one way, shape, or form. We may feel like we didn't do it well, but we did survive it, right? Resiliency is more about adapting well and not just adapting. So is there an opportunity for me to improve upon my resilience, to do it in an even more healthy way than I have been doing it now, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. So different ways that you can build resilience and deal with adversity in more healthy ways is to make connections. So, oh, sorry, Corey, were you going to say something? I just see your name popped up.
Nope, keep going.
Okay. Sorry, Corey's my colleague, so I just wanted to check with her. So yeah, making connections. So when you think of the circle of friends that you have, right? And we have a saying in French, and I don't know what the exact translation is in English, but in French it's ceux qui se ressemblent se rassemblent. So those who look the same gather together, kind of thing. So if you think of your friend circle, do you have individuals that are positive, right? And are you seen as a positive person? Or is it the opposite? Do you sort of, you know, your friend group, when you have an issue that you're going through, whether it's mental health related or stress or, you know, different things like that, do you feel like you can turn to them, or do you feel like it'll be dismissed? So just being mindful of those connections that you're making when you're having a hard time. Be selective with who it is that you reach out to when you need support. Avoid seeing crisis as an insurmountable problem, right? Again, I mentioned that we're here and we've survived every single adversity that has been thrown at us. So it's not insurmountable. Is it unpleasant sometimes? Absolutely. And is it tough? Yes, but not insurmountable. Accept that change is a part of living? Absolutely. Think back to 10, 20 years ago. Are you where you thought you would be? No, I thought I would be a school teacher, right? And I am not a school teacher, as you can see. We think that we're going to have children by a certain age, that we're going to be married by a certain age, right? And it just doesn't work out that way. And it's fine. Our journey just looks different. That's all. Move towards your goals, right? And take decisive actions. Sometimes that's all that's needed, to just do something, and it doesn't have to be a monumental action, but even just something like, if you're feeling low, taking a shower, right? And really being mindful while you're taking the shower to just ground yourself. Something like that can be really helpful. Sharing concerns and stressful feelings, right? So again, seeing if you can contact a friend or something like that to share what it is that you're going through and kind of talk it out. And look for opportunities for self-discovery. And that's different for everyone. Some individuals like to journal. I like to journal and, just kind of write about what I'm thinking. It offers a different perspective, right? And some like to go walking out in nature and that sort of thing. So yeah, it really just depends on the person. Nurture a positive view of yourself. So do you take the time, right, to really focus on what it is that you're great at and what it is that individuals love about you? Do they love that you're a positive person? Sorry, my assistant wants to leave the room. Okay, bye. He might come back later, we'll see. Excuse me. As we do tend to focus on the negative, don't we? We'll spend more time thinking about that, right, when it relates to ourselves, as opposed to thinking of the positive stuff. Keep things in perspective. Is there a certain judgment that we have about a certain thought? And sometimes that's what's helpful about talking to someone else. They can sort of throw a different perspective at you, right? And you can think that over and think, oh yeah, that person's right. Even though I think and feel this way, the way they're sharing the experience also works too. It's also factual, right? And how can you reword something for it to be less emotional and more factual? Maintain a hopeful outlook, right? So think of the things that could be a good thing, as opposed to, oh no, the worst is going to happen. Physical exercise, yeah. We all know that it's good for us, and we'll think of any excuse in the book not to do it. But once it's done, no one ever says, oh, I wish I hadn't gone for that walk today. Like, of course not. We always enjoy it. So kind of keeping that feeling at the front of our mind, and just really take the time to enjoy it, because it is something that we enjoy. And physiologically, right, scientifically proven that it's something that's helpful to us. Helping others really is a helpful act to take as well, right? And this is sort of the time of year when a lot of individuals go out of their way to help others too. So it's really nice. If you're feeling that might be beneficial to you, now's the time. And take care of yourself, whatever it is that looks like. Oh, and I want to thank Corey. She just shared those links again. That's perfect. Lovely. So what is it that we can focus on? We can focus on what's strong in our lives rather than what's wrong. There's something wrong in everyone's life. Really, if we take the time to analyze, but there's always great things too. So can we maybe think of the great things more often than not? And instead of always trying to fix what's wrong, maybe focus on making what's right even better. And know the difference of the things that you can change and the things that you cannot. And the things that you can't change, how does it serve you to think about it so often? And remember that we can change our response to events, our response. We can't change how others are going to react, how others are going to feel, but we can control our own emotions. It may be tough sometimes, don't get me wrong. And if, I think of individuals that struggle with anger, for example, you may need additional resources, like some sort of an emotion regulation support group or something like that. so that you can gain that confidence, you know, to remind yourself that, yeah, I do have control. Feels like I don't, but I can work at it, right? And I can really have control. And what's well-being? Of course, it's going to look a bit different for everyone, but really it's just that state of being comfortable, happy, and healthy, right? So you're sort of at peace and you have a high life satisfaction, right? You're just happy. You're content with whatever is happening in your life. There's a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose in your day. The ability to manage stress and challenging life experiences, and a general feeling of being well, right? And I'm sure that that's what we're all striving for. And it looks so simple on paper, doesn't it? Right? Just that state of being content and peaceful. But it's much more difficult sometimes said than done, especially when we get in our own way. So, but, you know, kind of having these sort of discussions is helpful to bring awareness to where it is that we're struggling the most, right? And where it is that we're really strong, and allocate our attention to where it needs to be allocated. So here are the 8 dimensions of well-being. And you see the list there. So we have physical, environmental, social, intellectual, financial, occupational, emotional, and spiritual. And often what we can see is that some of these are very strong in an individual's life, while others may be weaker, right? So someone may be very strong intellectually and financially, however, spiritually, they just haven't taken the time to take care of that part of themselves, right? So maybe feeling unbalanced. Think of if that wheel was a car tire and a couple of the pie pieces were sort of shorter than the others. Of course, it's going to be a bumpy ride. You might still get to where you want to go, but it's going to be tough, right? So is there a way to balance out that wheel so that it looks a lot more even across the pie pieces? So resource base that we have that we normally like to help individuals with is housing, income, work, and education, because we know that that's something that really affects our sense of well-being. And we sort of need to have these components at a healthy level, I guess, in our life for us to feel peaceful, or at least it helps, I should say, right? You think of housing, of course, someone would need shelter, you know, to really feel safe and at peace. So we have self-help and consumer organizations. There are family and friends, generic community services and groups, and different mental health services. And we're lucky enough in our province that a lot of the services that are available to us are free. Sometimes there's a waiting period. You know, I think of counseling services, right? Through Horizon or Vitality, something along those lines. It's a free service, maybe a waiting period, but at least you can take advantage and not have to worry about that added strain. And here, being in control of your own life, the things that are really controllable by yourself, practical understanding of mental health, right? And participating in presentations like this is going to help that, just to help bring an awareness and an understanding. Doesn't mean you have to be an expert, but maybe just wrapping your head around why it is that you feel certain ways. Positive sense of self, that's something that we can work on, each of us. A sense of purpose and meaning, and inclusion and belonging. So do we make sure that we have those connections that make us feel good and make us feel as if we are included? And these can go together, right? We want to offer these services to an individual, it starts with an individual wanting to take that step, of course. If a person doesn't want to change, they won't, and that's okay. But for those who do want to change, you know, these are different things that you can look at. Or even not, I shouldn't even say change, maintain even can be the right word in this case. You know, really just depends on where it is a person's at. One thing that's important as well is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is something that almost all counselors can sort of rely on when going through therapy with an individual, because it's something that's universal to everyone. And what it means essentially is that our thoughts affect our feelings, affect our behaviors, and affect our physical feelings as well. So we talked a little earlier about when we're feeling depressed, when we're feeling sad and that sort of thing, our thoughts tend to be negative, right? So is there a situation in our lives that we're going through and we think of it and we put a negative spin on it? Okay, so I'm trying to think of, I don't know, just a simple example. Even just being, let's say, cut off in traffic. Okay, so you're cut off in traffic and your thought is something very negative and dark. After having that thought that, you know, the other individual is careless and selfish and dangerous and that sort of thing, what sort of feelings and physical feelings and behaviors are we going to undertake? Are we maybe going to honk the horn? Are we going to speed up? Are we going to, you know, sort of yell? Are we, you know, what is it that's going to stem from having that initial thought and having those reactions? And we're sort of caught in that cycle. Where on the other hand, okay, someone cuts me off and just not biting at all. Just thinking, whew, okay, I'm glad I missed that. You know, and kind of having that thought instead. What would the feelings and behavior and physical feelings look like as a result of that thought? Much different, right? No horn honking, no speeding up, no yelling. You know, you just sort of go about your day and there's not much that changed. Other than, of course, you would have that stress response that, you know, I feel like I was almost in danger, you know, like that scare. But yeah, that's just a quick example to give in this situation, but it applies to everything. And if we change one of them, so if we change, let's say, our behavior, that can also have an impact on the physical feelings, the thinking, and the feelings. So any one of these four that you see, if we make a conscious effort to change one of them, it's going to have a chain effect, right? That's the general idea of CBT. And of course, it's explored in much more detail if someone were to go to, you know, therapy sessions and sort of really dive deep into different thoughts and feelings that they have. But yeah, hopefully that helps you sort of wrap your head around it. And you do have the control to change the chain, basically, is what we're getting at. So how is it that individuals react to stress? We see three main categories normally. So we see the overexcited, we see the underexcited, and then we see frozen, where it's just overexcited and underexcited at the same time. So because the brakes and the gas are being floored simultaneously, you're really just frozen and it's on overdrive, right? So when we're feeling overexcited, that's where you would see anger, agitation, right? Very reactive symptoms, outward symptoms. And one of the best ways that you may respond to relaxation would be things like meditation and deep breathing and progressive muscle relaxation, guided imagery, you know, those sort of things that sort of, you know, bring that sense of calm back to you. On the other hand, if you're feeling underexcited, that's where instead of having those reactive responses, it would be more internal, right? So someone who withdraws or becomes sad or depressed, right? Spaced out, sort of inattentive, that sort of stuff. Relaxation techniques that would be helpful would be rhythmic exercises and yoga, even massage therapy, those sort of things that brings you back, right? Brings you back out of being withdrawn. And freezing, when that happens, it's helpful when you have both safety and stimulation to help you reboot. So things like mindfulness, right? Taking a walk in nature, something like that, or power yoga. So it really just depends on how it is. And I'm sure that, you know, as we're going through these points, you may recognize, right? Oh, I'm an underexcited kind of person, right? And then you could even do a bit more research about it and just, you know, what sort of relaxation techniques can I engage in when I'm feeling depressed, right? And see what it is that works for you. Oh, I'm seeing Corey added, if anyone struggles with meditation or mindfulness, like myself, progressive muscle relaxation is a great option to try out. And you can search scripts or audio video on YouTube to try it out. Yeah, big time. YouTube and any other listening platforms, I'm sure they might have different podcasts and things like that. I find that really helpful when you're trying to do muscle relaxation. You can just kind of listen, you know, to that audio track as you're going through the steps yourself. So that's a great tip, Corey. Thank you for that. And here's a relaxation breathing technique that we're actually going to try to do together. And I want us to be mindful of how we feel now, as opposed to how we're going to feel in a minute, right? Once we have this breathing exercise done. So we're going to inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8, okay? And I'll guide us through it. So we're going to inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and exhale, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more time. Inhale, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So normally after doing a breathing exercise like that, we would already see a marked difference after breathing that way for 30 to 60 seconds, right? And if it's something that we practice often, it can really help us when we're sort of in crisis mode and we're really feeling anxious. It's something that can help bring us down. And remember when we talked about the cognitive behavioral therapy, I'll just go back for a quick second here. Remember this? So by doing the breathing exercises, we're actually changing our physical feelings. But because we're changing our physical feelings, don't forget that we're going to change the whole cycle, right? We're going to modify where the cycle is going. So that's something to keep in mind. I know a lot of individuals, if this one particular one isn't your favorite, there's also breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds. and hold for 4 seconds, right? So it's sort of more a square. And I particularly enjoy that one just because it's easy to remember, 4, 4, 4, 4. So it's up to you. Find whichever one is helpful. And like Corey said, there's also box breathing, we called it. Yeah, 4, 4, 4, 4. And like Corey mentioned, you can find walkthroughs like this on YouTube if you just kind of want to keep on track, sort of like a metronome for instruments. You can have someone walking you through it on YouTube. So different grounding techniques. We have 5 things you can see right now, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So this is something that you can do at any time, anytime. I remember myself, I was in a therapy session at one point, it was a few years ago. We were talking about mindfulness and how it would be helpful, for me to really focus on that. And my concern was that I didn't have time, right? I don't have time to be mindful because I felt like it was an added task. But what my therapist was able to help me with, kind of wrap my head around, is that it can be practiced anytime, right? And she gave me the advice of doing it while I brush my teeth, right? So I brush my teeth every day, more than once a day. And can I be mindful for, that 3 to 5 minutes that I'm brushing my teeth? Of course I can. Right? So that's a good way to ease yourself into it. Do it while you're doing something that you would have done anyway. And once that starts to take place, once you're more aware of your surroundings, yeah, maybe you'll seek out specific situations to undertake where you can be mindful. Oh, okay, I'm actually going to go swimming today or whatever. Not something that you do every day, but I want to be mindful while I'm doing it and that sort of thing. I change the taste to one that is great about yourself to make them less negative. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's cool. And I guess that's a really great way of looking at it. And thanks for mentioning that, Sarah. Sometimes there are different techniques that we think of and we're like, okay, yeah, like it sounds kind of interesting, but I don't like this part. Okay, fine. If you don't like the part, change it just a little bit and just kind of make it your own. Yeah, exactly, Corey, that we can make these tools fit for us. Yeah, whatever that might look like. So different ways that we can build mental wellness as well, right, is to manage stress. So anytime that we're under stress, there's a situation that's stressing us out, are we addressing it immediately? Or are we sort of letting it fester? It's not going to go away on its own, isn't it? Exercise regularly, talked about how helpful that is. A healthy diet, of course. We all know that we feel better when we're really mindful of what we eat, and it's not always takeout, and it's not always potato chips and that sort of thing, right? Improve your self-esteem. If there are things about yourself that you really don't like or whatever, how is it that you can embrace these things? And how can you remind yourself of the great things that, make you you? Adapt to changes, or just sort of exploring that. Do I adapt well to changes, or is there a way that I could do it better? Can I deal with my emotions? Have I found inner peace? And if I haven't, what sort of steps can I take to get there? Get enough sleep, of course. Of course, we need, several hours of sleep every night. And I think that that's something that we sort of take for granted, right? We stay up really late and then we don't want to get up in the morning and that sort of thing, right? So trying to keep a consistent sleep schedule would be very beneficial. Making sure to relax, building positive relationships, surrounding yourself with the right individuals in your life, whatever that looks like. Developing a strong support network. Give and receive compliments. I don't know how many times I've put my window down and told a pedestrian that I think their dog is cute. Like, I do that all the time. And just the reaction that I get, they're so excited that someone thinks their dog is cute, right? And that doesn't take away anything from me. It makes me feel great that I made them smile. Get involved in your community, whatever that might look like for you, and etc., because there are so many others. These are just, inspiration for you. And how do you support someone else? So let's say that you feel like you're a very resilient person, and what we mentioned about a person who's well. Ways that you can start off the conversation. Struggling with this, or tell me more about what happened at so and so's place, because that's weighing on their mind. Let's say, what can we do together, and I'm here to help. I'm just going to pause for a second. I see Corey said something. Probably the number one reason I become a distracted driver is seeing dogs out for walks. Oh my goodness, yes. Just say, oh, look at the pupper. It's mandatory to just look at the dog when you're driving. They're so sweet. But yes, for supporting others, when we think of the what can we do together, that always reminds me of a time that I had volunteered. It was at a library. The library had organized, an outdoor fun day for kids one summer. It was a couple summers ago. And this little girl that I had never met before came over, and she says, I don't know what to do. And she's sort of fidgeting and, biting at her nails and kicking the dirt and stuff like that. So I could tell she was kind of, I don't know, she looked stressed out a little bit, anxious. And I said, oh, well, you could go play with the slip and slide. And then she didn't say anything. She just kept biting at her nails. I said, oh, you could go painting. And she continued doing the same thing, didn't bite. So I stood up and I took her hand. And as soon as I did that, she led me over to the painting station, right? So just that comfort of what can we do together just took that weight off of her shoulders. And as soon as we got to the painting table, of course, she was able to sit and chit chat with other children. She was fine after that, but just taking that initial step. And I know that she's a child, I'm giving you an example with a child, but we all feel that way, don't we? If there's something that comes up and you sort of hope that someone else asks the question before you do, or, whatever the situation may be. So don't forget that there is strength in numbers sometimes, and that can really help someone who's struggling. So different formal supports. So we sort of talked about supports that you can find in your own life and, online, YouTube, that sort of stuff. But these ones are important as well, right? So support lines. We think of CMHA, for example. If you're having a mental health crisis, you can contact them. There's your family physician. There's a bunch of, virtual mental health services. My French is showing a little bit today, so thank you for being patient with that. Oh, thank you, Corey. She shared the CMHA helpline. So again, that one is extremely helpful if you're going through any kind of a mental health crisis, right? You're feeling really low, maybe even thinking of suicide, right? That would be an excellent resource for you. Of course, different professionals like psychotherapists and psychologists, extremely helpful. Community support services, something like, us, just different education that we offer to the community and that sort of thing, right? And we have a lot of support groups that go on. Employee assistance program, those are extremely valuable. There are a lot of employers that offer that nowadays. So ask if you're not sure. And often they can get you in touch with counselors, and they can offer free sessions. Different crisis services. I know that in Moncton, we have a mobile mental health crisis unit. So for wellness checks and things like that, they could take that on, so different services like that. And holistic practices, of course, right? Maybe even spiritual and stuff like that. Are there other experts in your area that might be helpful to you. And this is a website that we wanted to share because it's something that you can do yourself. It's completely free. It's for anyone that's 16 plus, and it's basically a forum where you can ask questions, you can share experiences. There are some, short courses and things like that you can follow yourself as well on your own time. And it's monitored by trained counselors, which is so great. So every once in a while, you'll see that they'll jump in and they'll add their 2 cents as far as what's going on. So that's the website, Together All. Oh, perfect. Corey also shared the mobile crisis unit. Thank you very much. Yeah. So there's one for Fredericton, St. John, Moncton, Miramichi, and Upper River Valley. That's awesome. And Vitalite also has teams. Yeah, true. Perfect. That's great. Thank you for that. And if you have any other questions or any concerns or anything like that, I welcome any questions at all. There's my email. So Meaghan.brown@cmhanb.ca. Maybe, Corey, you could type it into the chat as well if someone wants to copy paste it. And what I'll do is I'll just stop sharing my screen for now, because that's all that I had planned that I want to say. Thank you, Corey. Oh, great. Yeah, that's a really great point. Danny shared that 211 can help guide individuals to services. Absolutely. That's a new thing, just came out this year. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's almost like, 911 is for emergencies, right? 811 is for medical related questions. 211 is just to find different resources, community resources that would be available, for someone who's going through a tough time, maybe mental health wise or socially or something like that. Anything that's in that wheel that we had talked about that you want help with, you want to increase your power in that pie piece. That's something that 211 could help with. Yes, yeah. In the Q&A, there is a spot where you can submit a question anonymously if you don't want me to say your name or to even see your name. I wouldn't see it if you were to use that option. So are there any questions or any comments at all? Anything that we talked about that you'd like to discuss a little bit more? I'll just give it a minute. I do, while we're waiting, I want to let you know that as soon as this session is closed off, there is going to be a survey that'll come up. And it's just basically to let us know how we did. And we appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. So if you have a moment, please do. Just gives us some direction on what we can do better in the future and stuff like that. Oh, great. I just see a little comment that it was informative and well prepared. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love having these conversations. They always sound a little different, every time, especially if there are questions and comments. We can sort of go off on tangents and that sort of thing. So, but this is a quiet gang. It happens sometimes. I really appreciate you attending. It's just nice. It's nice to have these kind of conversations, to help support our mental wellness, right? There's never enough that we can do to enhance our mental wellness. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate that. Oh, I have a question. Curious if you have recommendations for people without doctors on where to go to access medication advice to manage their mental health issues. Yeah, that's a really great question. If you do not have a family doctor, excuse me, you can call 811 to be assigned one. There would be a waiting period involved, but at least you would have that longer term support in the future. For shorter term support for now, I know that some after hours clinics will help with some of those situations. And even emergency services. You may, if you're seeing that, whether it's yourself or a loved one, you know, sort of going through a tough time and really think that you need medication to get through it, you may need to go to the hospital as well, right? Because they have trained professionals that are available to kind of take those questions and help you out. And if there are follow-ups that are needed, they can help with that too, right? So I think that would be, are you thinking of anything, Corey? A lot of doctors, walk-in clinics are hesitant. That's true. I know that they're hesitant to prescribe psychiatric medications. I know that if you're already on some medications, they may prescribe others. It's definitely difficult when you don't have your own family doctor. So I think the 811 option would be the best thing to sort of contact as soon as possible. Oh, cool. Steph, thank you for that. Steph is another colleague of ours, and she's sharing that she knows of an online service that's called e-visits. What were you going to say, Corey?
Sorry, I was just going to say, in my own personal experience, for anyone that's curious, at least on the Anglophone sector, you know, without a family doctor, I often did run into the barrier of having the clinic doctors not be comfortable. And fair enough, there can be some pretty significant side effects to a lot of these medications. And if they can't follow up with you, I understand the safety component.
And it's tough to know about your situation in just that short period of time too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you can go to the hospital. You know, that doesn't need to be a lot of people associate the hospital with crisis and emergency. But unfortunately, if that's your only access point to an appropriate service provider, then that's your only access point. So I have done it before where I've literally just kind of packed a bag and a book and a coloring book and my phone charger and showed up at the ER, been very transparent with the triaging nurse and said, I don't have access to a physician who is capable and able to properly prescribe mental health medication, and I believe I need it significantly, quite urgently. I'm prepared to wait. I understand I won't be triaged particularly high. And they do get to you and they do see you, and oftentimes you'll see an ER doc, and if it's within the 8 to 4 hours, oftentimes there's a psychiatrist on duty, and they would be who would speak to you and possibly prescribe medication. That's my personal experience anyways.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Corey. That's a really good point, that it's, we do think of crisis and we think of physical injury, right? And you're right that if someone were to come in with, I don't know, let's say a heart attack or something, they're probably going to go in ahead of you. But yeah, just going to them for that resource is absolutely fine and needed in some situations. So thanks for sharing that, Corey. I'm glad that you were able to get some services that way. Oh, something at 2. Bye, Steph. Any other questions? Any other comments? That was a really good one. I know that it's something that a lot of individuals are experiencing. Not everyone has a family doctor. So we kind of, the ones that do have family doctors can take that for granted, right? When we're talking about services, we're like, yeah, talk to your family physician, but it's just not the case for everyone. All right. I think we'll end it there. I want to thank you once again for being with us, and I hope that you join us again for future sessions if you see any topics that kind of catch your eye. You're welcome, Kelsey. It's my pleasure. Thank you for being here today, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.